The tank biathlon is one of the several military competitions that are held every year, alongside aviadats for aircraft and combat helicopters, Suvorov's push, motorized rifle troops, and others. Pioneered in 2013, it became an instant TV hit, one of the most interesting reality TV shows anywhere in the world, given that the proceedings are shown with appropriate and occasionally hilarious running commentary on Russian TV. However, this reality show serves several more important purposes. Arguably, the most important one is to raise the emphasis on realistic troop training among tank forces. Long before the national and international level competitions, which are held at the Alabino training area near Moscow, tank biathlons are held at all eligible army units to identify the best crews which would participate in the higher levels of the competition. Given that the results of the biathlon are fully transparent, they help identify best training practices that can be then adopted by other military formations and select the most effective leaders for future promotions. The competition is hard on both the men and the machines. Events include firing from the halt and on the move, using conventional and guided anti-tank projectiles and machine gun fire against targets up to over 2 kilometers distant. In the course of the competition, each tank is expected to cover about 100 kilometers over gravel roads and through a variety of standard obstacles at high speed. The crews must demonstrate the ability to rapidly shift from one mode of operation to another, and the mastery of every aspect of operating their vehicle, including mounting, dismounting, and stowing ammunition in preparation for firing. Moreover, the biathlon also includes an event testing individual tankmen's physical and military prowess. Secondly, since it simulates battlefield conditions pretty closely, the tank biathlon's lessons are being used to make improvements to Russia's existing and future tank designs. The firing events have shown the importance of rapid target acquisition, and the latest T-72 model, designated T-72B3M or T-72B4, has been fitted with an independent thermal sight for the tank commander's use. That upgrade has been so far mainly confined to tanks used by Russian crews in the competition, but it will probably spread as part of future T-72 upgrades. Thirdly, the event serves as an exercise in building international contacts and connections. One can learn a lot about the current configuration of global geopolitics simply by observing which countries have sent teams to participate. The 2015 tank biathlon included participation by the People's Republic of China, India, Kazakhstan, Serbia, Armenia, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, as so far no NATO country has participated in any of the events held since 2013, although the invitation remains open to them. The fact of China's and India's participation in the competition is as much a message to the West as their soldiers marching through the Red Square during the 2015 Victory Day parade. Most of the national teams use T-72B3 tanks provided by the Russian hosts, although they are welcome to come to the competition with their own vehicles, as the Chinese team did. The individual unit tank biathlons are already taking place in May 2016. The military district level competitions will follow shortly, and we will soon have the chance to see which countries show up at the Alabino in 2016 and what vehicles they put through their paces in front of the cameras.
One of the key sectors of Russian military modernization is its tank fleet, which still includes many unmodernized T-72B and T-80U tanks. In order to close the tank quality gap with NATO, Russia opted to upgrade the T-72B to the T-72B3 standard, a modernization that yielded a modern tank comparable to the T-90 at a fraction of the cost of buying a new T-90. The T-72B3 tank, which entered service in 2011 at the rate of about 200 a year, and which became widely known thanks to the annual tank biathlon competitions, was intended to be a stopgap measure until the T-14 of the Armata family became operational. According to statements by the Uralvagonzavod, Russian procurement plans entailed the purchase of 2,000 T-14 MBTs. These plans appear to have been modified due to several factors which appeared in the last 2 years. The first was the crisis in Ukraine and the heightened state of conflict with NATO. The crisis raised the need for a truly modern MBT comparable to NATO's tanks to become operational as quickly as possible. While the T-72B3 can be fairly described as a modern tank, it is still inferior in some respects to the latest NATO Leopard 2A6 and M1A2 Abrams tanks. Secondly, the basic T-90 design was also rapidly becoming dated, which reduced its international competitiveness, as evidenced by the success of Ukraine's Aplot tank in the 2011 competition in Thailand, where it won over the T-90. While the T-90 has enjoyed considerable export success, including major contracts with India and Algeria, it is now facing the prospect of being eclipsed by more recent designs from China and even Ukraine. Third, even though Ukraine proved unable to fulfill the Thailand contract in a timely manner, producing only 5 tanks a year in 2014 and 2015, the Russian leadership has to consider the worst-case scenario of Ukraine ramping up Aplot production for domestic use with NATO's assistance. Fourth, Russia's economic crisis, caused mainly by the rapid drop of oil prices, means that the ambitious military modernization plans face the need of being as cost-effective as possible. Fifth, the T-14 is a radical design featuring many revolutionary technologies. It is a technologically risky project featuring many as yet unproven technologies, with the possibility of developmental delays. Since its design is very different from earlier Russian tank designs, its introduction would also require considerable changes to the training doctrine, as tank crews trained to use Russia's current tanks would be ill-prepared to use the T-14. As a result, it would be unlikely that Russia could field a sizable and fully operational T-14 force before 2020 at the earliest. The change to Russian procurement plans induced by these factors became apparent in the summer of 2015, when the Russian MOD announced its T-90 fleet would be modernized to the T-90AM variant. This version of the T-90, known by its export designation of T-90SM, was developed in recent years, apparently in response to the T-90's aging and the emergence of viable Chinese and Ukrainian competitors, and was not intended for adoption by the Russian military. However, the need for a quicker and less expensive alternative that would fill the gap until the T-14 became available compelled the Russian MOD to take a second look at the T-90AM, which has the advantage of using already existing T-90 hulls, is a mature project with few developmental risks, and whose familiar layout means Russian tank crews can readily transition to the new design. At least one T-90AM with the 2A82 125mm tank gun developed for the T-14 is undergoing tests at Nizhny Tagil, and upgraded vehicles could be delivered to Russian units as early as 2016 if the Russian MOD desires it. Therefore, by 2025, Russia's tank fleet is likely to consist of about 1,000 T-72B3 tanks, 400 or so T-90AM, and about 500 T-14s, with their number steadily increasing. This force would have both qualitative and numerical superiority over any conceivable combination of Russia's opponents at that time.
Russia's campaign in Syria, which was waged mainly through air power and military advisors who left the actual land combat to the Syrian forces and their allies, the next such campaign, which might occur either in the Middle East, someplace closer to Russian borders, or even on Russian territory itself, could very well require a sizable ground operation. While the Russian ground forces were not directly tested in Syria, even though its command and advisory personnel proved to be far more capable than the indigenous military talent left over from Saddam Hussein's military and advisors proved by Turkey and Gulf Arab states. In the event that the Russian ground forces find themselves having to fight a land war, they will be as well prepared as their aerial counterparts. While the ground forces languished for most of the first decade of the century, when there were no major military threats to Russia in evidence, the gradual deterioration of relations which followed the 2008 financial crisis, the subsequent systemic economic crisis, and the crisis-induced need to conquer new markets to avert economic collapse in the West, meant that the neglect had to be quickly reversed. The reversal, which is still underway, includes not only a far more active training agenda with numerous readiness alert drills and large-scale multi-service strategic exercises which are once again eclipsing NATO's ability to stage large operations, is also complemented by the development of state-of-the-art training methods. The 333rd Combat Training Center, CTC, in Molino exemplifies the ground forces' emphasis on combat readiness. Even though Russian equipment tends to be durable and easily serviced, high-intensity training does put considerable wear and tear on it and requires a considerable expenditure of fuel. Moreover, such training also tends to damage equipment when used by inexperienced operators. To maximize the training regimen's effectiveness, the Russian military is turning to simulator training not only for individual training but also for large unit training. The 333rd CTC allows a complete motorized rifle brigade of several thousand troops to undergo a 7-week training program, which starts with individual soldier assessment, followed by company and battalion exercises, and finishing with a brigade exercise. The center allows the soldiers and units to begin with simulator exercises to acquire the basic individual and unit skills, to be followed with full-scale field exercises with the use of laser simulators and live fire by all types of weapons available to a motorized rifle brigade. The 333rd CTC also includes a battle town that can be used to practice urban warfare skills by a single battalion task force at a time. The center began its operations in September 2015, with the first unit to undergo training being a Navy infantry brigade. It is probably not a coincidence that the first Russian troops to be deployed to Syria were naval infantrymen who underwent advanced combat training at the 333rd. The ground forces plan to send 3 complete brigades through the center every year, though in theory the center could accommodate 6 complete 7-week training cycles a year, and there is also an intense and accelerated version of the training program available, which is likely to be used when a combat operation is imminent. On a final note, the 333rd Center contractors included the German firm Rheinmetall, which withdrew from the project following the EU's imposition of sanctions on Russia in 2014. However, in a display of import substitution, the Russian defense industry proved capable of meeting the challenge and completing the center using domestic technologies. The planned expansion of the ground forces, which will include the reactivation of 4 motorized rifle and tank divisions, means that the demands on the training facilities will only increase. The 333rd CTC exists mainly to serve the needs of the Western Military District. In the future, each of the remaining 3 military districts are expected to receive a similar training facility.